Welcome back to the Practical Enthusiast channel. We have an exciting video. It's the first video of 2022 for the channel and the first new project of the year, and it is a really cool one at that. Let's take a look. And there we are. It is a 2011 BMW 535i with one really special feature, which I'll get to in a moment. But this car is just gorgeous. So I still have my E39 530i, and it is a wonderful car, but it's almost a little too collectible, a little too nice to be driving every day. So I've been looking for an F10 series of the 5 Series chassis, which is what this is. It went from 2011 to 2017 is what encompasses the F10 series, and I think it's a really good looking sedan. It looks better than the previous generation. I would say it's not quite as nice as the E39, but it is still proportioned very well. It doesn't have the Bengal era nastiness on the rear end and in the front end. It just looks really stately, and it's got that proper 3-box look to it. I always like to have a darker color car. This black really matches this car, and it has some tinted windows on it, so it really is a dark looking car, and I love it. I really love it. It doesn't have the sport package, which is one thing I was hoping to find, but when this one came up, I just couldn't say no. So I'm going to run through the specs, and you'll see why I took a gamble on this one. So first of all, it only has 92,000 miles on it. It's pretty low for 2011. 2011 was the first year of these, and then it is a one-owner car. One-owner car with total service history, absolutely no reported accidents on the Carfax, and all this service was conducted pretty much at the BMW dealer. So everything has been done to it. It's had regular oil changes. There's no nastiness from lack of maintenance that's hanging around on this car. I didn't even have to put the Euro tag on it. Someone already said, you know what? It looks good on the front of here. And luckily it was there when I bought it. Some other upsides is it has brand new brakes. It basically has brand new tires. All these things that I typically have to replace when I go through a car. I mean, these big ticket items, it's already been done. But that's not to say there aren't a list of things we have to go through to maintain one of these. And that's kind of the idea behind this project series. These F10s are starting to get old enough where you have to go through the typical BMW maintenance. Now, this has a little bit of different maintenance than the E39, such as the cooling system. These have aluminum radiators, so you don't have to replace those. But on the flip side, these have electric water pumps. Yes, BMW always finds a way to make a car unreliable. So that'll be one of the things we're replacing because they give you no warning before they fail. That among other things. So I was looking specifically for a 535i, and that's because it has the BMW inline 6, but it's also a twin power turbo, which means it's a twin scroll turbocharged inline 6 with about 310 horsepower. And it is plenty adequate to move this car along. So it is a little bit heavy, close to 4,000 pounds, but that's what you get if you want a quiet, supple ride. These engines do have timing chains. They are direct injection. They are throttle by wire, all the things you can expect in a modern car. And the series name of this engine is the N55. And it's well documented, and it's actually a fairly stout engine. It is an open block design, so you can't just pump up the boost on like the N54 in the previous 535i generation, but it's still a very stout engine that will last a very long time if looked after. Let's jump in and see what the interior is like. So as you can see, it has the tan interior. It's very elegant looking inside. The leather's in great shape. You see the rear doors have these sunshades that can come out. And then check this out. This is an F10 feature right here. Soft closed doors. So you can just barely shut it, and it will close the door. Lights in the door handles, that's pretty nifty. This is way fancier than any car I've ever owned. And here is the party trick of this specific F10. Are you ready? Do you see what I see? Do you see what I see? This car comes equipped with a ZF 6-speed manual transmission. That is an incredibly rare option, especially here in the United States. 3-pedal arrangement, BMW F10 535i. Very, very hard to find car. So when I saw this come up for sale, especially for the price, and it was local, I just had to have it. I don't even have room to park all the cars I have right now. I could not pass this up. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to find one of these cars with a manual transmission. And I have to say, all the reviews from the time period kind of said, this car is too big to have a manual transmission, and I could not disagree with them more. It is the smoothest manual transmission I've ever experienced. It's almost like BMW finally perfected the shift feel. They took out the notchiness. They made it just so buttery smooth. And then they decided to nix it from the catalog. So BMW stopped offering the manual transmission option in early 2014. So you can potentially find one from 2011 to early 2014. But again, if they're out there, the owners don't want to get rid of them. They are literally the perfect car. This can get you up to 30 miles per gallon on the highway. That's better than most cars you can go out and buy new today. So as you can see, this one has the iDrive system and it has the navigation because it has the larger screen up here. And just to show you how the F10 has a little bit lesser build quality than, say, the E39, just take a look at the buttons here on the radio presets and the start-stop button. The paint started to wear off. It just kind of makes it look a little bit cheap. Down here, it does have an electronic parking brake. Push this down, it sets the brake. You know, you just have the paint starting to wear off. So that'll be one of the things I tend to. The iDrive button, for example, paint's pulling off there. So I've got solutions to all these, and we'll deal with it in future videos. So now that I've done an overview, let's take it for a drive and see just how beautiful it is to drive around. So this whole push-to-start technology is completely new to me. This is definitely the most modern vehicle I've ever owned. And the fact that this is paired with a manual transmission just makes it even more fascinating that they were able to make this work. So basically, you have it in gear, it won't start the car, but it'll turn it to the on position. Very quiet engine, starts up super fast. When you start it up from a stop, the parking brake, which is electronic, is already on, so you just push down on that. You can feel it actually through the brake pedal when it releases. I do wonder how that will hold up over time as, you know, salt and debris gets in there. Will it eventually fail? I don't know. I would rather it have been a manual parking brake like all the other cars I have, but this is just the way new cars are. So let's go take it for a drive real fast. So one thing I've noticed as I've been driving this around is the clutch pedal's a little bit creaky, so I'll have to deal with lubricating that hinge pin at the very least. Also, something I've noticed is that there's some clunking and some just general noise coming from the front suspension, and I believe it's the sway bars, either the end links or the bushings, or maybe both. And after doing some research, the sway bar has the bushings molded in. So I did find a solution to that, which we'll cover in a future video. Otherwise, the suspension's quiet with no issues whatsoever. Again, this is the smoothest manual transmission I've ever experienced with a rear-wheel drive layout. Front-wheel drive cars typically have a very smooth manual transmission, especially Hondas, but BMWs, they've always been a little bit truck-like. Even the E39's a little bit notchy, but this one, a lot of reviews called it like a rubbery feel, but I think it just makes it a smooth feel. It doesn't feel like you're having to force it into gear when it's cold, even when it's warmed up. Like the E39's transmission, you can just tell it's like got some heavy internals that make it a little hard to shift it in the desired speed. But this one is just effortless. Like the E39, it's got a instantaneous miles per gallon readout. Difference on this one is it's electronic. And I've taken this on a 100-mile journey out on the highway, and you can legitimately get 30 miles per gallon. This also has a system called efficient dynamics, which I believe has something to do with the alternator and when it's on and off related to charging. So when you're coasting in gear, it kind of swings up and goes to this battery-like icon, kind of similar to the Honda Civic Hybrid I went through last year, where it has this kind of indicator that tells you when you're being efficient and when you're not. So it's an interesting design BMW's put in place on these 5 Series. So I'm happy to say this car doesn't have any rattles on the interior, which is honestly hard to say for any car that's 11 years old and has 90,000 miles. Typically you get some sort of interior rattle. So in that regard, BMW's build quality is still very good. But I will say there are a lot of plasticky types surfaces in this interior that make it feel a little lower rent than, say, the E39. For example, when you start playing with the vent controls, you can tell that they're just not as precisely made. I can kind of wiggle them around a little bit, the little dials that control how much airflow is coming through them. They just don't feel like they have that weighted fluidity behind them that the E39 does. So certainly some cost cutting on these interiors, but luckily it doesn't seem to be too much to the car's detriment. The door handles, at least in the front, have kind of this double locking mechanism where you have to pull them twice to actually open the door. First pull just unlocks it. So that's taking some getting used to for sure. This car comes fitted with run flat tires. There's Goodyear, I think Eagles on this right now. And it does not have a spare tire, which is an unfortunate truth of most modern cars, especially BMWs. Where you would expect to find the spare tire, the battery is actually located. And BMW didn't build in a recess in the trunk floor to actually house a full spare tire. So, funny enough, they offered a spare tire retrofit kit. It's basically a spare tire in a bag with the tools and jacks you might need, and then you just like tie it down to the trunk. Not exactly an elegant solution, but it's basically the only solution you have if you want to have a spare tire so you can take trips without worrying of being stranded. That's something I might look into for this car because I would like to take some road trips in this thing. It's so great out on the highway. Just glides along, drives like a dream, so quiet. It is exactly the car you want in a road trip car. And it's efficient and plenty powerful. Having a turbocharged engine means you can hit mountain ranges and you're not going to be lacking power. The clutch is extremely easy to modulate on this. This car actually would be pretty easy to teach someone how to drive manual on because the flywheel, you can tell, is pretty heavy. So it keeps a lot of that inertia going while you're letting out the clutch pedal to make for really smooth clutch disengagements and engagements. So it's actually pretty difficult to stall this car. Starting from a stop on a hill is extremely easy in this car because it has a hill start assist, meaning it locks the parking brake while you're sitting on an incline so you don't roll back. And as you start to move forward, it unlocks the rear wheels and you're on your way. Super handy thing to have if you're new to driving manual. I have to say, BMW's basically perfected this car and perfected the manual transmission. And unfortunately, just as they did that, they killed it, at least for the American market. It's unfortunate because this car really is the best iteration of the 5 Series available with the inline-6 and the manual transmission with rear-wheel drive. Just imagine if they just continued to make it. It'd be great. I'd be happy. I have another car to look forward to in the future when I end up inevitably selling this one. But unfortunately, this is the end of the line, assuming you don't go up to the M5, which, you know, I don't think I'll ever be in the financial situation to do that. So the engine has a beautiful intake note, which is just typical of the BMW inline-6 engine series. This one's no different in that turbo does give it a little bit extra boost in the top end. Really sweet powertrain on this car, and as you see, it just shifts 1 to 2. Typically the struggle point of most BMW transmissions. I mean, this car has 92,000 miles on it. It drives like it's brand new. It just shifts smooth as silk. Now, the difference between the automatic and the manual as far as the center console is concerned is that you only have one cup holder up here, and the other one is located in this center console kind of deal. You have to fold it down, so a little bit funky there, similar to the E39's cup holder situation is definitely an afterthought, but I'm not worried about that. I don't typically drive around with drinks, so it's not really a concern. But that is one drawback of having the manual option on this car. God, this car is just so fun to drive. It just gets up in boogies. The exterior lights on this car are all LED, the turn signals are LED, so it really looks modern out there in traffic, especially at night. It really looks like a fancy car, and it really is a fancy car. So I'm happy to say that there's really no retrofitting you have to do. The sound system on this car is amazing. It has great lows, great treble. I mean, that's kind of what you get when you buy a more modern BMW. So you're probably wondering, all right, so you said you got a good deal on this car. What did you pay for it? So I did something that I don't typically do, and I bought this from a used car dealer. I think I've ever bought a car from a dealer once before. I just try to avoid it just because they have markups on them, and no matter what, whether you buy it from a dealer, if it's a used car, it's got problems. It's got things you have to go through. So why would I pay a premium for a car that I could buy privately for a few thousand less? The fact that this car came up for a reasonable price from a dealer, I decided to just go ahead and do it. This car was listed for $13,250. So I went there and looked it over. It was just as nice as it looked in the pictures. Everything, it checked all the boxes for me. So I talked him down to $12,800, which, you know, if you do a nationwide search for one of these cars, if you can even find one, that is a good $5,000 to $6,000 less than what you normally pay at a dealer. So after tax and all of that, this car has set me back $14,100, making it the most expensive car I've ever bought. And just wait, we're going to dump another few $1,000s into it to make sure it lasts for a long time to come. That's expected, isn't it? So I think that gives you a pretty good idea of how this car drives in its original state, which is to say, it's basically perfect. I'm just a perfectionist, and I want to go through all the mechanical systems and make sure it won't let me down. You might also be wondering, okay, well, you had the E39, and why did you buy a car that's basically the newer version of that? And the truth is, I still have the E39, and I'm a bit on the fence on what to do with it. I love that car. It is like a brand new car. This car is too, but they're really different in their driving experiences, and so far, I've decided to just keep the E39 for now, just because I enjoy the slightly more engaging driving experience, the slightly heavier steering, and just it's a little bit smaller feeling. And it just has that true German build quality, where this car kind of went more mass market and lost a little bit of that panache that the E39 has in droves. So I'm keeping it around for now, but more than likely this car will turn into my actual daily driver, and the E39 is just going to be a collector. So there you have it. That is the new project for the channel. We are going to go through this car top to bottom and make it a reliable BMW F10, and you can bet there's going to be a parts list that everyone who buys an F10 from here on out will be able to reference and put theirs into good shape so they can trust it for a very long time. So be on a watch out for that. And until then, we'll see you all in the next video.